He was hurrying to see Svidrigailov. What he hoped for from that man he himself did not know. But in that man there was concealed some hidden power that held sway over him. Having once perceived this, he had been unable to rest, and now, moreover, the time was at hand. As he made his way along, there was one question that particularly tormented him. Had Svidrigailov been to see Porphyry? So far as he could judge, he was ready to swear that he had not. Thinking about it more and more, remembering all that had happened during Porphyry's visit, he put two and two together. No, he had not. Of course he had not. But if he had not seen Porphyry yet, would he or would he not do so eventually? For the moment it seemed to him unlikely. But why was that? He could not have explained this either, but even if he had been able to, he would not have spent too much time worrying his head about this in particular. All of these things tormented him, yet at the same time left him somehow indifferent. The strange thing, which possibly no one would have believed, was that the question of his present immediate destiny left him only faintly and somewhat absent-mindedly preoccupied. He was being tormented by something else, something of a far more important and ultimate nature, something that concerned himself and no one else. But that was different from all this, something essential. Furthermore, he was experiencing a sense of infinite moral weakness and weariness, even though his reason was functioning better than it had during all these recent days. And was it really worth it now, after all that had taken place, to attempt to master all these newly arisen trivial embarrassments? Was it, for example, really worth trying to hatch some intrigue in order to stop Svidrigailov going to see Porphyry? To study the behaviour of a man such as Svidrigailov, to make inquiries about him, waste time on him? Ah, how tired he was of all that! Yet here he was hurrying to see Svidrigailov. Might it not be that he was hoping for something new from him, some hint, some way out? Like a man clutching at straws, might it not be that fate and instinct were drawing them together? Perhaps it was merely the effect of weariness and despair. Perhaps the person he needed was not Svidrigailov, but someone else. And Svidrigailov merely happened to have turned up. Was it Sonia? But why would he go and see Sonia now? In order to ask for her tears again? And in any case, Sonia frightened him. Sonia represented an inexorable judgment, a decision that could not be altered. Now it was either his way or hers. Particularly at this moment, he did not feel up to going to see her. No, he had rather go and put Svidrigailov to the test. What was happening to him? He could not escape the inward feeling that it was precisely Svidrigailov who had for a long time now been the person he needed for some especial purpose. And that was all very well. But what could they possibly have in common? Even the wrongdoing each had committed could not be viewed on an equal level. Furthermore, this man was highly unpleasant, obviously a lecher, sly, deceitful beyond all doubt, and probably quite vicious. The stories about him tended to confirm that. He had, it was true, gone to some trouble for the sake of Katerina Ivanovna's children, but who could tell for what purpose, and in what lay the significance of his concern? This man was forever engaged in plans and projects of various kinds. During all these days there was another thought that kept constantly flickering through Raskolnikov's mind, causing him abominable torment, though he had made the most persistent efforts to banish it, so painful was it to him. He had sometimes fancied that Svidrigailov had been spying on him, was indeed doing so even now, that Svidrigailov had found out his secret, that Svidrigailov had designs on Dunya. What if he had them even now? The answer to this question was almost certainly that he had, and what if now, having learned his secret and thus gained power over him, he were to decide to use it as a weapon against Dunya? This notion had sometimes tormented him even in his sleep, but only now, as he made his way to Svidrigaïlov's lodgings, did it appear to him with conscious vividness. This thought reduced him to black fury. For one thing, if it were true, then everything would be altered, even his own situation. He'd have to disclose his secret to Dunya immediately. He would perhaps have to betray himself in order to prevent Dunya from taking some incautious step. What about the letter? That morning Dunya had received some letter or other. From whom in St. Petersburg could she have had a letter? Not Lutzin, surely. It was true that Razumikin was on guard there, but Razumikin did not know anything. Perhaps he ought to tell it all to Razumikin. Raskolnikov considered this prospect with loathing. Whatever happened, he must see Svidrigaïlov as soon as possible, he decided to himself conclusively. The important thing now, thank God, was not so much the details as the essence of the matter. But if he was capable of it, if Svidrigaïlov was pursuing some intrigue against Dunya, then... So tired had Raskolnikov become after all this time, this long month, that he was by now unable to resolve such questions other than by one simple decision. Then I shall kill him, he thought in cold despair. A feeling of heaviness constricted his heart. He came to a standstill in the middle of the street and began to look around him. Which way was he going, and where had he reached? He was on the Prospect, some 30 or 40 yards from the Haymarket, which he had just crossed. The whole of the second floor of the building on his left was taken up by an inn and eating-house. All the windows were wide open. The inn, to judge by the moving figures at the windows, was packed full of people. The saloon was overflowing with the sound of choral singing, the rasp of a clarinet and a violin, and the loud beat of a Turkish drum. Female shrieks could be heard. He was on the point of going back, puzzled as to why he had turned on to the Prospect, when suddenly, in one of the open windows at the far end, sitting right by the sill at a tea-table, pipe in mouth, he caught sight of Svidrigaïlov. This gave him a terrible shock, amounting almost to terror. Svidrigaïlov was watching him and studying him in silence. What also caused Raskolnikov an instantaneous shock was the fact that Svidrigaïlov seemed to be on the point of getting up in order to slip away while still unnoticed. Raskolnikov immediately tried to make it look as though he had not spotted him, gazing reflectively to one side, while all the time continuing to observe him out of the corner of his eye. His heart was beating anxiously. It was true. Svidrigaïlov evidently did not want anyone to see him. He had taken his pipe out of his mouth and had been about to move off with the intention of making himself scarce. Having stood up and moved the table away, however, he had no doubt suddenly noticed that Raskolnikov had seen him and was watching him. Between them there now took place something that resembled the scene of their first meeting at Raskolnikov's lodgings, when he had been asleep. A crafty smile appeared on Svidrigaïlov's face, began to spread and spread. Both men knew that they had been seen and had been watching each other. At last Svidrigaïlov broke into a loud laugh. "Well, well, come up if you want. I'm in here," he shouted out of the window. Raskolnikov went upstairs to the inn. He found Svidrigaïlov in a very small room at the back of the establishment. The room had one window and adjoined the main saloon, where, at 20 small tables, amidst the desperate shouting of the peasantniki, some merchants, civil servants, and a large number of all kinds of townsfolk sat drinking tea. The sound of billiard balls was coming from somewhere. On Svidrigaïlov's table, facing him, stood an uncorked bottle of champagne and a glass that was half full. In the little room there was also a boy with a small hand organ, and a healthy, red-cheeked girl in a tucked-up striped skirt and a Tyrolean bonnet with ribbons, a street singer of about 18 who, in spite of the choral performance in the other room, was singing to the organ player's accompaniment, in a rather hoarse contralto, some kind of manservant's ditty. "That'll be enough," Svidrigaïlov said, breaking her off as Raskolnikov entered. The girl immediately cut short her performance and stood still in submissive expectancy. She had also sung her rhymed and somewhat dubious manservant's ditty with a kind of earnest and submissive look on her face. "Hey, Philip, a glass!" Svidrigaïlov shouted. "I haven't come here for champagne," Raskolnikov said. "As you wish. I didn't buy it for you. Here, Katya, you have some. That's all I want for today. Now off you go." He poured her a whole glass of wine and placed one yellow paper rouble on the table. Katya drank the glass down in one, the way women do, that is to say, in a dozen swallows, took the banknote, kissed the hand of Svidrigaïlov, who with the utmost gravity permitted her to do so, and left the room, the boy with the hand organ trailing out after her. They had both been summoned up from the street. Svidrigaïlov had hardly yet spent a week in St. Petersburg, but already everything around him was on some sort of patriarchal footing. The inn's manservant, Philip, was by now a friend, and grovelled in servility. The door that led through to the saloon could be bolted. In this little room Svidrigaïlov was quite at home, and the likelihood was that he spent whole days in it. The inn was dirty, wretched, and not even of average quality. "I was on my way to see you. You're the very person I'm looking for," Raskolnikov began. "But why on earth did I suddenly take the turning to the Prospect after I'd crossed the Haymarket? I never come along this way, and I never look in here. I always turn right after the Haymarket. And this street doesn't even lead to where you live. Yes, I just turned the corner, and there you were. It's strange." "Why don't you just say it's a miracle?" "Because it may only be an accident." "Oh, what's the matter with all these people?" Svidrigaïlov said, breaking into laughter. "They won't admit the existence of miracles, even though they secretly believe in them. I mean, you say yourself that it may be only an accident. You have no idea how many wretched little cowards there are in this town on the question of having one's own opinion. Rodion Romanich, I don't mean you. You have your own opinion, and have not been afraid to have it. It's for that reason that you drew my curiosity." "Was that the only reason?" "Why, it's sufficient, isn't it?" Svidrigaïlov was evidently in a stimulated condition, but only slightly so. He had drunk only half a glass of champagne. "I seem to remember you came to see me before you had found out that I was capable of having what you call my own opinion," Raskolnikov commented. "Oh, things were different then. A man's footsteps lead him to all sorts of places. But as far as the miracle is concerned, I would say to you that I think you spent the last 2 or 3 days asleep. It was I who suggested this inn, and it was no miracle that you came straight here. I myself explained to you how to get here, told you what street it was on, and the times at which you could find me here, remember?" "No, I've forgotten," Raskolnikov answered with some surprise. "I can believe it. Twice I told you. The address must have imprinted itself on your memory automatically. You also took the turning along here automatically, and you went straight to the right address, without being conscious of it. Even as I was telling you, I didn't have much faith that you had taken it in. You certainly give yourself away, Rodion Romanich. And there's another thing I'm convinced, that there are too many people in St. Petersburg who talk to themselves as they go about. This is a town of semi-lunatics. If we had any seats of learning in this place, the medical men, the jurists, and the philosophers would be able to conduct the most valuable investigations into St. Petersburg, each according to their speciality. There aren't many places where there are as many gloomy, harsh, and strange influences on the soul of man as there are in St. Petersburg." Think what the climatic influences alone are worth. Yet, this is the administrative centre of all Russia, and its character must have an effect on everything. But that's not what matters now. What matters now is that on several past occasions I've watched you from the wings. You come out of that building of yours, still holding your head up straight. By the time you've gone 20 paces, you've begun to lower it, and you're folding your hands behind your back. You look, but you evidently no longer see anyone either in front of you or to either side. Finally, you begin to move your lips and talk to yourself, and sometimes you free one of your hands and declaim something out loud, and then you stand still for a long time in the middle of the road. That's very bad, sir. Someone apart from myself might see you. It wouldn't do you much good. It's all really much of a muchness to me, and I'm not going to try and cure you, but I think you know what I mean. So, you know I'm being followed? Raskolnikov asked, studying him keenly. No, I know nothing of the kind, Svidrigaïlov replied in astonishment. Well then, let's leave the subject of me alone, Raskolnikov muttered, frowning. Oh, very well, let's do that. I'd rather you told me, if it's true that you come here drinking regularly, and told me to meet you here twice, why it was that when I looked up at this window from the street, you hid and tried to slip away. I saw that very plainly. Ha ha ha! And why that day, when I stood on your threshold, did you go on lying on your sofa with your eyes closed, pretending to be asleep when you weren't asleep at all? I saw that very plainly. I might have had reasons. You know that yourself. And I too might have had reasons, even though you're not going to find out what they were. Raskolnikov lowered his right elbow onto the table, supported his chin from below with the fingers of his right hand, and stared fixedly at Svidrigaïlov. For about a minute he studied Svidrigaïlov's face, which even on earlier occasions he had always found startling. It was a strange face. It almost resembled a mask, white and rubicund, with rubicund scarlet lips, a light blonde beard, and blonde hair that was still quite thick. His eyes were somehow excessively blue, their gaze excessively heavy and immobile. There was something terribly unpleasant about this handsome and extremely youthful, if years were anything to go by, face. Svidrigaïlov's clothes were fashionable, summer-styled and lightweight, and his shirt and cuffs were particularly smart. On one finger he wore an enormous ring studded with an expensive precious stone. Do I really have to waste time playing with you as well? Raskolnikov said suddenly, coming straight to the point, with a kind of convulsive impatience. Even though you may be the most dangerous man if you take it into your head to harm anyone, I personally don't intend to fool about any longer. I'll demonstrate to you now that I don't attach as much importance to myself as you no doubt think I do. You may as well know. I've come to tell you that if you maintain your former designs on my sister, and if towards that end you plan to take advantage in any way of the things that have been revealed of late, then I will kill you before you put me in jail. My word is my bond. You know that I'm able to keep it. The second point is this. If there's anything you want to tell me, because during all this time I've had a feeling that there is, then tell me it quickly, because time is short and it may very well soon be too late. I say, what's all the hurry? Svidrigaïlov asked, studying him inquisitively. A man's footsteps lead him to all sorts of places, Raskolnikov said, in black impatience. Only just now you were challenging me to be open with you. Yet, at the first question I put to you, you refused to answer, Svidrigaïlov commented with a smile. You still think I have some kind of purpose up my sleeve, so you view me with suspicion. Oh well, that's perfectly understandable on your part. But however much I'd like to be on closer terms with you, I shan't make the effort to persuade you that the contrary is true. Quite honestly, the game's not worth the candle. In any case, I had no plans to talk to you about anything in particular. Then why was I so important to you the other day? I mean, you were looking after me, weren't you? Oh, simply because you were an interesting subject for observation. The unreality of your situation appealed to me, that's all. That, and the fact that you happened to be the brother of a certain young lady who interested me greatly, that on frequent occasions I had heard a great deal about you from that very same young lady, and that consequently I decided you must have a great influence on her. That's not too little by way of explanation. Though actually I will admit that I find your question rather complicated, and it's hard for me to answer it. I mean, take just now, for example, I don't mind betting that you haven't come just to see me about that matter, but about something new as well. I'm right, am I not? Yes? Svidrigaïlov insisted with a crafty smile. Well, that being said, will you believe it if I tell you that even as I was on my way here in the train, I was counting on the prospect of you also telling me something new, and on my being able to borrow something from you. That's the kind of wealthy men we are. What do you mean, borrow something from me? Oh, how can I explain it to you? Do I myself really know? You see, the sort of miserable little inn I spend all my days sitting in, and I quite enjoy it actually. Or rather, it's not so much that I enjoy it as that one must have somewhere to sit. I mean, take that poor Katya girl. Did you see her? I mean, I wish I were a gourmand or a club gastronomer, but, well, you see the sort of meals I get. And he jabbed a finger into the corner where on a little table a small tin plate containing the remnants of a horrible dish of beef steak and potatoes. Incidentally, have you had anything to eat? I've had a bite or two and I don't want any more. I don't touch alcohol at all, hardly, except for champagne. I only have one glass to last me the whole evening, and even then it gives me a headache. I asked them to bring me a bottle to set me up because I'm about to go somewhere, and you behold me in a singular frame of mind. That was why I attempted to hide just now, like a schoolboy, thinking you'd slow me up. But it seems, and he took out his watch, that I can be with you for an hour. It's 4:30 now. You know, I sometimes wish I were something. Oh, a landowner, or a father, or an ulan, a photographer, a journalist. But I'm nothing. I have no specialism. Sometimes I get very bored. Actually, I really did think you might have something new to tell me. What sort of man are you? Why have you come to town? What sort of man am I? You know the story. A member of the gentry. Served 2 years in the cavalry. Then loafed around here in St. Petersburg for another 2. Then got married to Marfa Petrovna. Then went to live in the country. That's my biography. They say you're a gambler. No. What sort of gambler am I? I cheat at cards. I don't gamble. So you were a card sharper when you lived here before? Yes, that's right. Well, did you get horsewhipped? It happened. Why? Well, in that case, you must have had the opportunity of challenging people to duels. As a rule, that makes one's life more interesting. I shan't contradict you, but I'm afraid I'm not given to philosophizing. To be perfectly honest with you, I came here more on account of the women. Even though you only just buried Marfa Petrovna. That's right. Svidrigaïlov smiled with disarming candour. So what? You seem to think there's something wrong about my mentioning women in that way. You mean, do I or don't I think there's anything wrong with lechery? Lechery? So that's where you're heading. Well, actually, for the sake of order, I shall begin by answering your question about women in general terms. You see, I have a weakness for idle chatter. Tell me, why should I restrain myself? Why should I give up women? Since at least there's something I care about. It's a pastime at any rate. So the only thing you're sure of finding here is lechery? So what if it is? I think you've got lechery on the brain, though I must admit I do like a straightforward question. In lechery there is at least something permanent, something that's truly founded upon nature and is not subject to the imagination, something that is pressed like a constantly live coal in the blood, forever setting one on fire. A coal it will take a long time, possibly into one's old age, to put out. I think you would agree that lechery is an occupation of a sort. What are you so glad about? It's an illness, and a dangerous one. Ah, so that's where you're leading. I agree that it's an illness, like everything that passes the bounds of moderation. And here it's essential to pass the bounds of moderation. But I mean, in the first place, it takes one man this way and another man that way. And in the second place, of course, one ought to observe moderation, prudence, even of a villainous kind, in all things. But you see, what am I to do? If I didn't have that, I'd probably just have to shoot myself. I agree that a man with any decency ought to put up with the frustration, but you see, I just... And would you be able to shoot yourself? That's enough, Svidrigailov countered with revulsion. Please do me the favour of not talking about that, he added hurriedly, without any bravado that had manifested itself in all his words thus far. Even his face seemed to have altered. I admit it's an unforgivable weakness, but what am I to do? I'm afraid of death, and I don't like it when people talk about it. Do you know what sort of a mystic I am? Aha, the ghost of Marta Petrovna. Well, does she still keep on coming to see you? Oh, that. Don't mention that either. It hasn't happened so far while I've been in St. Petersburg. In any case, to the devil with it, he exclaimed with an air of irritation. Let's rather talk about this. Though actually... Oh, damn, what a pity there's so little time, and I can't stay with you long. There's something I'd like to tell you. Who do you have to go and see? A woman? Yes, a woman, that's right. An unexpected encounter. But no, that's not what I want to tell you about. But doesn't the loathsomeness, the sheer loathsomeness of this whole environment have an effect on you? Have you lost the strength to stop? So you claim to have strength, do you? Ha! You surprised me just now, Rodion Romanich. Even though I knew in advance that it was going to be like this, you keep harping on to me about lechery and aesthetics. You're a Schiller. You're an idealist. All that, of course, is just as it should be, and one should indeed be surprised if it were any different. But I must say that even so, it's a strange phenomenon when one comes across it in reality. Ah, what a pity there's so little time, because you really are a most intriguing subject. Incidentally, do you like Schiller? I think the world of him. Oh, what a show-off you are, Raskolnikov said with some disgust. Oh, my goodness, Svidrigailov replied, bursting into laughter. Though actually I won't argue. I may very well be one. But why shouldn't I do a bit of showing off if it doesn't do anyone any harm? I've been living in Marfa Petrovna's country house for 7 years, and so now, having greedily pounced upon as intelligent a man as yourself, not only intelligent, but in the highest degree intriguing, I'm simply glad of the chance to loosen my tongue. And there's also the fact that I've been drinking these half glasses of champagne, and they've gone to my head a bit. No, the point is that there exists a certain circumstance which has bucked me up enormously, but about which I shall remain silent. Where are you off to? He asked suddenly, in alarm. Raskolnikov had begun to get up. He had started to experience the room as heavy and stuffy, and felt uncomfortable about having come here. His suspicions of Svidrigailov had been confirmed. He saw him as the most empty and worthless villain in all the world. For heaven's sake, sit down, don't go yet, Svidrigailov implored him. Why don't you order yourself some tea? Come along, sit down, and I promise not to talk nonsense about myself. At least, I shall tell you a story, if you'll let me. I shall tell you the story of how a woman, to use your style of language, saved me. It would also be a reply to your first question, as the young lady concerned is your sister. May I tell you it? That way we shall kill time too. Go on then. But I hope you... Oh, have no fear. What is more, even in such an unpleasant and empty character as myself, Avdotya Romanovna is capable only of implanting the most profound respect.